Hours after the capture of Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela, Gregg Jarrett was on the Fox News channel doing outstanding work, as always, as one of its top legal voices. He joins us here on KCMO Talk Radio in Kansas City. He wrote a great opinion piece as well yesterday at foxnews.com, headlined, "No, Trump's order to snatch Maduro was not illegal or unconstitutional." Greg, good morning. It's great to have you on in Kansas City. I was told by our own Kansas City Congressman Emanuel Cleaver that the president's decision required approval from Congress, and what he did was unconstitutional. Why is that not the case?
Well, Trump does not need permission from Congress to act. First of all, his authority is inherent in Article 2 of the Constitution, and indeed, every single president since the end of World War II have taken military action on their own to protect American citizens, defend national security, and they did so without consulting Congress. So your congressman is simply wrong. And the predictable condemnation from Democrats, I think, is more hysterical and driven by politics, but not the law. The War Powers Resolution of 1973, which so many Democrats have cited, oh, you're violating the War Powers Act. No, he's not. Read the act. It's not a prohibition on a president. It's a notification requirement within 48 hours of taking military action on his own. And that's all it is. But beyond that, Trump can also rely, as the previous presidents have, on the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force. Congress passed it in 2001. It gives the president unilateral power to capture or eliminate terrorists, and that includes narco-terrorists like Maduro. Just read the superseding indictment that was released on Saturday. This guy's a terrorist. Obama used the AUMF liberally, so did Biden. Biden even, at the end of his presidency, put a $25 million bounty on Maduro. If Biden had done what Trump did, as I say in my column, the Democrats would be organizing a ticker tape parade. But because it's Trump, I'm aghast at this illegality and unconstitutionality of it all. It's neither.
Marco Rubio made the rounds on the Sunday shows, as I'm sure you saw yesterday, Gregg Jarrett. And one thing he also alluded to is that this was a case, too, that was about making sure the servicemen and women who pulled this off were protected here. And sad to say, but in this hyper-partisan environment, we all know, I think this thing would have leaked had this thing had to go to congressional approval. Not that it's about that, but how much do you think that factors in here?
Well, in terms of just procedure, this is not the kind of case, as Rubio pointed out, where you want to notify people in Congress who have a propensity to leak. I mean, somebody would have placed a phone call to Caracas to warn Maduro. So, it's one of the reasons why presidents wait until after the fact to comply with the War Powers Act, and they have 48 hours to notify Congress of military action. And the president has another power at his disposal, and Rubio was really explaining this. It's the take care clause in the Constitution. It's Section 3, Article 2. The laws be faithfully executed. That's an obligation, a duty of a president. So, think of it this way. Effectuating the arrest of a wanted fugitive like Maduro, who's been federally indicted on drug trafficking charges and a great many other charges, that qualifies as enforcing all laws. And just because he's the de facto head of state in another country does not give him immunity from the long arm of American law. So when people claim that Trump had no right to do this, they should read the Constitution. They should review American history of presidential military action, which is replete with events where presidents took similar military action unilaterally. They're entitled to do that.
Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, joining us on KCMO in Kansas City. So Maduro is going to appear in Manhattan court today. From a legal perspective, for those of us who are not lawyers and are not experts on this stuff, where does this go from here, Greg, and how is this going to play out in the days and weeks to come now?
Well, Maduro gets his day in court. Eventually, there's a trial on the drug charges, trafficking, weapons charges. And the evidence against him would appear, just based on the indictment, to be pretty considerable. That he led a drug cartel that was designated as a foreign terrorist organization, and that included murders and torture and egregious crimes against humanity so severe that even the United Nations recognized it and condemned Maduro for it. Now, Maduro's lawyers are going to make a variety of pretrial challenges. They'll challenge the circumstances of his arrest. They'll say the U.S. has no jurisdiction to try him. They'll challenge the integrity of the evidence. I mean, that's going to be a long process before you ever get to trial. But, if past is prologue, it's not going to work. Noriega tried the same thing back when he was captured under the first Bush administration in January of 1990. Those challenges failed in the appellate courts. One challenge went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in the end, Noriega was convicted and, thrown in prison. And the U.S. does have an excellent track record in prosecuting other foreign drug cartel leaders like El Chapo and a great many others. There's never a shortage of accomplices who strike plea deals. They testify against these drug kingpins. You might even see a plea deal with Maduro's wife, who was arrested along with him. It tends to be that spouses know all about the corruption and where the money is hidden.
Do you think that they lean into that and try to basically get Maduro's wife to flip in some way?
Sure, I would. I would explore that. And, I bet you that her defense attorney will be the first one to raise the prospect of it. And depending upon, what she can tell them, she might actually get an excellent deal.
How does that, from the legal side, who are the people that end up representing these drug lords from other countries, and where do they find them, Greg? How does that work?
Well, it's an interesting question. There are a lot of defense attorneys who would be happy to do it for next to nothing.
Publicity, right?
Because it's a high-profile case. Publicity. They make a name for themselves. Maduro obviously has tremendous financial assets. Whether he can access those and actually use them for his own defense is another issue. Ill-gotten gains arguably cannot be used for that purpose. So if he, claims that he's indigent, at least in the United States, then, he gets court-appointed defense attorneys to represent him. And I suspect that they'd be a pretty high class of lawyers to do that.
From a legal perspective, Gregg Jarrett, there's already been conversation on what other leaders in the Western Hemisphere could be Maduro'd next, so to speak. What is the legal precedent for saying, whether it's Maduro or it's anybody else in any of these other countries, do you see more of that coming down potentially under this administration, or do you think the bar is so high and the evidence has to be so overwhelming that they may not want to go down that road?
Well, I think it's the latter, and you've put it quite well. The bar should be very high for taking such extreme action as this, entirely justified with Maduro. I think the larger picture is that, Venezuela has the richest oil reserves in the world. It's more than 300 billion barrels of oil. A lot of it's dirty oil, so it's expensive to refine. And the infrastructure in Venezuela had deteriorated. But nevertheless, for countries like Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, they were all getting the Venezuelan oil. That's now cut off to them. So, it damages Americans' adversaries. And was that one of the reasons why this was done? Well, I'm sure it was a consideration. I don't think it was the primary reason, but it was certainly considered. And, geopolitically, this does great damage to those countries I named, particularly, Russia and China and Iran.
Last thing, Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst on KCMO in Kansas City. People are asking, hey, why New York? Now, I understand that's where the charges originated, but there's already fear that, hey, because everything is political these days, do folks in New York's legal system want to give Trump a perceived big win? Should that be a concern right now?
Well, I assure you there are discussions going on in the Department of Justice as to whether or not this case should be transferred outside of New York because of its hostile panel of judges that are there. I think the judge, I haven't looked into it, but I saw a few minutes ago that an anti-Trump judge has been assigned the case. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, look, Noriega was tried down in Florida, and that certainly is a better, more advantageous venue. And the DOJ could attempt to transfer it down to Florida, which has vast experience in trying drug trafficking cases. So I think that's probably on the table. It's something that the DOJ is thinking about. When the investigation first began in Maduro, it emanated in the Southern District of New York Federal Court, and it's been there ever since. And this investigation, the gathering of evidence, all the money laundering, the shell companies where Maduro and his cronies have been hiding the money, that started in New York, and it's been going on for a decade, that investigation. And, they've had a lot of experts who've been following the money trail for years. And simply because it started in the Southern District doesn't mean that the venue can't be changed.
Good to know. Gregg Jarrett doing great work here. You've seen him a lot on Fox News here in recent days, and his column is worth reading as well. We'll put it up on our social media channels. Gregg, thank you so much for joining us on KCMO. Really appreciate the insight.
My pleasure, Pete. Thanks so much.
You bet. That is Gregg Jarrett on KCMO Talk Radio. I was watching a lot of the coverage on Fox on Saturday morning, and, now that we've got a 7-year-old in the house and Claire comes down and she's asking me, she's seeing the action on TV. And I'll tell you what, trying to explain this to a 7-year-old who asks every follow-up question in the book and is very smart, that's a tough task, man. That was a heavy lift, trying to break this all down in terms that's understandable to a 7-year-old who, if you don't answer it in the way that she understands, is going to ask you another question. So I was like, oh, boy, I was starting to sweat on Saturday morning. Should have called in Gregg Jarrett. That's what I should have done.
Pretty soon she's going to start asking, and I have a follow-up.
Oh, my gosh. That was too much. I was like, geez, I'm just going to put on some Bluey here because these questions are getting too much for me right now. There's just too much going on. But, hey, sharp as a tack. There you go.